Hi everyone, it's Pete here. So I thought I'd do a little video to show you these Big Bore Aluminium Shocks that I got from eBay, and they came from America. So this is the second set of these I've bought. Bought another set of my Granite. These are going to go on to the Centon. So you can gather by the fact that I bought another set. I was quite impressed with them. But I thought it was worth doing a video because there's not all that much information on the eBay listing. So I'll just give a bit of information about what they're like and the dimensions and everything. So they do various different colours and they do different sets for different makes and models of RC cars, but what will be really useful is if they told you the size hole to hole, because you might have a car that isn't listed here, but if you knew the size you might be able to find some that fit. So there's a note on the listing just to warn you might get charged by customs in your own country to receive the items, but I didn't do on this occasion, but it's worth bearing in mind that you might do. So what you get in the packet is literally just the shocks. In that there's no instructions and no branding and no nothing, so that's why I thought it might be worth doing a video, because I say there's so little information with them. So the only other thing you get in the packet is 2 spare rod ends. Also you just get the little plastic spacers that go in the holes at the top of the shock. They are well made because say look, it's just nicely machined aluminium. I like the way the tops are all one piece, it's all metal, so you don't have a plastic piece through there, which is sometimes a weak point on these. So I was checking on the Arrma website, and all the 3S range, which is the Big Rock, Centon, Granite and Typhon, all use the same shocks. So the front one here is 101mm hole to hole, and the rear one there is 115mm hole to hole. So these Big Bore aluminium ones I've noticed are very slightly longer. I make the front ones hole to hole 104mm, and the rear ones I make 118. So that's just me measuring with a ruler, but they are very slightly longer if you hold them next to each other. So with the Arrma ones, when you take the top off here, it doesn't actually get inside the shock. All that does is to release the spring and the spacers. So these aluminium ones, they work in the more traditional way, that when you take the top off, that's to get into the oil, and so it gets the spring, you need to just release that little piece there and take the spring off. Yeah, one thing to note is that these springs are very slightly narrow. I think that's probably about 19mm, and this seems to be about 20. So again, it's just me measuring with a ruler, but it's something like that. You could use your Arrma spring on these. It is very slightly wider, but doesn't seem to come out over the end of that, so you could use that if you wanted to. So with these ones, rather than using preload clips like this, it's got a threaded collar so you can set the tension of the spring. So I'll just unscrew the bottom and show you inside. Okay, so once you get inside, you've got your piston top there with a couple of holes in, held in with things like a C-clip, E-clip. So I assume if you take this clip out, then there are O-rings within this. So I haven't got a suitable tool for doing that, so can't look just at the moment. Anyway, it seems nice and smooth, and say the previous set of these didn't leak or anything, so it's good. One thing to note, there's no sort of rubber diaphragm here, and that usually compensates for the difference in the volume of oil when the shock shaft goes in. So I don't know if you end up with a tiny bit of air in the top, but anyway, they seem to work all right. So one difference to notice about these is these look like they're 4mm wide. I'm only using a ruler, but I think that's my best guess at it. And these are 3. I have bent one of these before, but I think I did drive it into a concrete block, so I can excuse it a bit. But anyway, these should be notably tougher. Okay, so just looking at my Granite for a minute, which I've already got the Big Bore shocks on. One thing I've noticed with these, well, and the Arrma ones, is that it's much easier to push it up and down at the front than it is at the back, and I put the same weight of oil, which was 600 in this one. I think the reason is that at the front there, the shocks are about halfway along the arm, or just a bit over halfway along the arm, whereas at the rear they are very near the end. So at the rear you're pushing the spring more directly, whereas at the front you've got a bit of leverage over the shock. So what I'm thinking is maybe I should put heavier grade oil in the front than the back. So my Centon is currently looking more like a Big Rock with this Big Rock body and the Granite wheels. So what I've done with the Centon was to slightly shorten the shock lengths to make it a bit lower and make it more of a cornering machine, while it was the Centon and it had the smaller wheels. So now that I've made this into a truck, I'm going to leave the shocks at their standard lengths, make it stand a little bit higher up. So I think to even up the front and the back, I'm going to use 1000 in the front and 600 in the back and see how that works out. All right, let's put some oil in to So this is the front, one of the front ones. Bit of oil around the seal there. Okay, so I think most of the air has come out of the oil. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's no diaphragm on these. So if you were to put the top on this with the shaft at the bottom there, then there'd be nowhere for the oil to go, and so you wouldn't be able to push that in. So the thing seems to be to do this up, but with the shock shaft fully up. So the shock shaft is being pushed out a bit by that, so I'm going to need to let a bit of oil out of there. Screw it and push that up. Okay, so a bit of fiddling, barely any rebound there, so that seems right. Just got to keep letting oil out until that doesn't spring back too much. Yeah, it's a bit of a faff to get the right amount of oil so that you haven't got too much rebound, but I don't think it matters if there is a little bit, but as long as both sides of a pair are about the same, which they are. Okay, so they're all built up. I can feel the difference between the different viscosities of oil between the front and the back, but let's see how they are when they're on the car. One thing that's worth saying is if you've got the hot racing pivot ball set, you get these pieces which are the tops of the shocks, but they don't work with these. You need to use these plastic ones that they give you in the set. Right, so all done. Feels pretty good. So I don't think the 1000 in the front is too much. So feels about right. So one thing I've noticed that I noticed when I did the Granite as well is these little plastic things they get to put in there just leave a bit of play at the top there. So what I did with the Granite, I found some little rubber grommets and little bits of brass tube, a bit like that, and they made a more snug fit at the top there. So you do notice it rides a little bit higher than the standard shocks by a few mil. Let's get the body on, see what it looks like. Okay, so the Senton or Big Rock, or whatever this is now, is ready for action. I'll be testing this pretty soon, but in the meantime, thanks ever so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.